When we think about protecting an organization, it's easy to get lost in the technical details. But effective security isn't just a technical problem, it's an architectural challenge. It demands a deliberate blueprint, one that's designed to align every single protective measure with the core purpose of the business itself. So, this really brings up a crucial question for any leader to ask themselves. Is your security function just an afterthought, a cost center that's always reacting to the latest threat? Or is it a core component, an interlocking gear, just like this, that's actively driving your business strategy forward and actually enabling its success? So here's how we're going to break that down. We'll start by looking at the governance blueprint itself. Then we'll see why it's so important to build from the top. From there, we'll get into drafting the master plan, talk about securing the entire business ecosystem, and finally, we'll land on the core philosophy, what I call the architect and the captain. All right, let's get right into our first section, the governance blueprint. Just like any building that's meant to last, a strong security program has to start with a solid foundation. And for us, that foundation is a clear, well-defined governance framework. Okay, on to our second section, building from the top. This introduces what is probably the single most critical principle of this entire architecture. You see, effective security governance isn't some kind of grassroots movement. It absolutely has to be built deliberately from the top down. And here's why that's so important. The only model that truly works is the one you see here. Senior management has to be the one to initiate and define security policy. Why? Because only they have the perspective to align it with the overall mission of the business. The classic bottom-up approach, or maybe some well-meaning IT staff try to create policy, well, it's fundamentally flawed because it creates a security program that's completely disconnected from what the business is actually trying to achieve. Now, the person leading this effort is the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO. They are the chief architect of our security program. And for this role to have any chance of success, it has to be autonomous, and it must report directly to senior leadership. This part is really non-negotiable. It's what ensures security priorities are driven by real business risk and strategic goals, not sidetracked by internal politics or arguments over departmental budgets. And to make that role even clearer, it's really useful to understand how it's different from other C-level tech roles. The CISO's goal is singular: protect assets and ensure the organization is resilient. The CIO, on the other hand, is focused on using IT systems effectively for business operations. And the CTO is all about managing the tech stack. They're partners for sure, but their goals are distinct. The CISO's number one job is protection, period. So, moving into our third section, we've established the leadership structure. Now it's time to draft the master plan. This is where we take that high-level vision and start translating it into a concrete, actionable strategy. A truly comprehensive security program is built on these three interconnected tiers. It all starts with a 5-year strategic plan. That's the long-term vision. Then, that vision gets broken down into a 1-year tactical plan, which gets specific about projects and budgets. And finally, you have the operational plan, which details the day-to-day, quarter-to-quarter tasks and procedures. It's how you make sure that big vision is connected to what people are doing today. Of course, a plan is nothing without the right people to execute it. And this is not a one-person job. Security is absolutely a shared responsibility. While the senior manager is the one who's ultimately liable, it's the asset owner who classifies the data and says who gets access. The security professional designs the controls, the custodian handles daily tasks like backups, the auditor gives that essential independent review, and, critically, every single user has a role to play in following policy. Every one of these is a vital link in the chain. Okay. That brings us to Section 4, securing the ecosystem. A governance framework on paper is one thing, but it can't exist in a vacuum. It has to be tough enough to handle the messiness of the real world, things like growth, big changes, and outside partnerships. Take mergers and acquisitions, for example. When you integrate another company, you are inheriting a massive amount of risk. You're inheriting their security posture, or more often their lack of one. A good governance program demands that security assessments are baked right into the M&A due diligence process. You have to evaluate the total cost of ownership, and that includes what it's going to cost to fix all the security problems you're about to buy. And the reverse is also true. When you're selling off a part of the business, you need a really strict process to make sure your data doesn't walk out the door with it. We're talking about complete asset sanitization, securely wiping all data from the hardware, plus formal exit interviews and a careful review of all the NDAs. It has to be a clean, secure separation. And your security perimeter doesn't stop at your own walls. It extends all the way out into your supply chain. Third-party governance is the formal process of making sure your vendors and partners are actually complying with your security standards. And this isn't based on trust. It's verified through things like on-site assessments and formal policy reviews. These requirements get formalized in two key stages. First, you define a service level requirement, or an SLR. Think of this as your wish list. These are the security standards we need you to meet. It becomes the basis for your negotiation. Then, that wish list gets locked down into the service level agreement, the SLA. That's the final legally binding contract that holds them accountable for specific, measurable security performance. This brings us to our fifth and final section, which is all about the guiding philosophy, the architect and the captain. This is really the mindset that holds this entire security architecture together and makes it work over the long term. In both a legal and a practical sense, being prudent is mandatory, and that's achieved through two concepts. First is due diligence. That's knowing what should be done. It's all the research, the planning, and creating the policies. The other side of the coin is due care. That's doing the right thing at the right time, the actual continuous work of implementing and maintaining those controls. If something goes wrong, demonstrating that you did both is the only way to disprove negligence. And this metaphor really brings it all home. Due diligence, that's the architect, carefully designing a ship's hull that's strong enough to survive any storm. But due care, that's the captain and the crew, maintaining that hull and steering the ship correctly every single day. You see, without the architect's design, the crew is unprotected. But without the crew's daily maintenance, even the best design will eventually fail. You absolutely have to have both. And so this brings us to the final critical question you should be asking of your own organization. Is your security an architect's blueprint? Is it a deliberate, proactive, and resilient design? Or is it simply a constant reaction to the last storm?